The Pacific Ocean crashes against the rocks 500 feet below the jagged cliffs of Big Sur, California. The sound is deafening, hypnotic, the kind of primal roar that makes you feel simultaneously alive and terrified. It's 1987, and a 20-year-old woman named Deana Wild stands at the edge, taking in a view that will be her last. The wind whips through her hair. The salt air fills her lungs. The sun is warm on her face. She's wearing high heels on dangerous terrain, which later will seem like such an obvious detail to question, such a clear red flag that something was wrong. But right now, in this moment, she's just enjoying the spectacular beauty of the California coast with people she trusts completely, people she thinks are her friends. Her companions, Virginia and BJ McGinnis, walk toward their car while she lingers at the cliff's edge, wanting one more look at the endless Pacific stretching to the horizon. They're a middle-aged couple who've befriended this vulnerable young woman going through a difficult divorce. They've been so kind to her, so generous, letting her live with them rent-free, showing her around California like she's family. They're like the parents she wishes she had, the stable adults who seem to care about her when her own life feels chaotic and broken. When Virginia and BJ turn around moments later, Deana is completely gone. They race back to the precipice and peer down in what looks like absolute horror. Deana lies motionless on the rocks far below, a fall that nobody survives. They rush to a nearby gallery for help. Their story simple and tragic. Accidental fall. High heels on dangerous terrain. These things happen at Big Sur all the time. People fall off those cliffs like logs, one investigator would later say. But the camera never lies. And Virginia McGinnis made one fatal mistake. She couldn't resist documenting her crime. Deana Jalen Hubbard was born in Kentucky in 1967. Her parents divorced when she was just 3 years old. Her high school friends described her as fun to be around, adventurous, part of a lively social circle. But Deana had challenges. Her IQ was probably around 85 or 90, investigators would later note. She was wonderful and friendly and thoughtful, but she was vulnerable in ways that predators could exploit. At 17, Deana fell in love with a Navy man named Jay Wild. 2 years later, they got married and moved to San Diego, where he was stationed. But military life is hard on young marriages. His constant absences while at sea strained their relationship until it finally broke. They separated in 1987, leaving Deana alone in California, far from her family in Kentucky, emotionally raw from a failed marriage. That's when she met Virginia and BJ McGinnis. Or rather, that's when Virginia found her perfect victim. Think about that for a second. Deana was everything a predator looks for. Young, naive, separated from her support system, going through emotional trauma, trusting everyone, questioning nothing. She was a spider's prey caught in a deadly web before she even knew she was in danger. Virginia Agnes Hoffman was born in 1937 in Ithaca, New York, to a dairy farmer and his wife. The family lived in grinding poverty. Virginia suffered sexual abuse as a child, according to research from Radford University. In childhood, she exhibited all 3 conditions of the McDonald triad, behaviors that psychologists theorize can presage violent behavior in adults. Bedwetting past an appropriate age, cruelty to animals, and fire setting. That last one? Fire setting. Remember that detail. Before Virginia turned 30 years old, she'd already collected on at least 5 insurance claims associated with fires in buildings where she lived. 5 fires, 5 insurance payouts. And nobody thought to investigate the woman who kept barely escaping burning buildings with a check in hand. In 1972, Virginia's own daughter, Cynthia Elaine Coates, was discovered gone by hanging. Virginia collected the insurance money. Authorities suspected ending of life, but could never prove it. How do you prove a mother ended her own child's life when she's already perfected the art of making incidents look like accidents? On September 8, 1974, Virginia's former husband, Sylvester Reardon, passed away under mysterious circumstances. Authorities could prove nothing. Virginia collected more insurance money and slithered away into the shadows. In 1986, just 1 year before Deana's ending, Virginia's own mother, Mary Agnes Hoffman, suffered a fatal heart attack under suspicious circumstances. Once again, Virginia collected insurance money. See the pattern? Every person who passed away under Virginia's watch had one thing in common: a $35,000 life insurance policy. That specific amount was diabolically perfect. Small enough that insurance companies didn't investigate. Large enough to make the effort worthwhile. Virginia had refined ending life into a business model, collecting bodies and checks with equal efficiency. She'd also claimed to be a nurse, which gave her access to vulnerable people and medical knowledge. The claim was completely false. Virginia McGinnis had no medical training whatsoever. But the lie gave her credibility when she offered to care for people who would soon be collecting no more paychecks. On the day before Deana Wild's ending, Virginia McGinnis walked into an insurance office and purchased a $35,000 life insurance policy on Deana's life. Virginia specifically inquired about accidental ending coverage. Let that detail sink in. She was asking about accident coverage 24 hours before staging an accidental fall from a cliff. The beneficiary listed on the policy was Virginia's son, James Coates. Virginia told the insurance agent that Deana and James were engaged, that they were planning to get married, that this was just responsible financial planning for a young couple starting their life together. It was all lies. James Coates was in prison for a parole violation, and he was married to someone else. Deana had probably never even met him. But Virginia needed a beneficiary who wasn't herself, someone who would make the policy look legitimate. The witness signature on the insurance document belonged to Alice Cassan, Virginia's neighbor. But here's the problem. Alice Cassan never signed anything. She knew nothing about any insurance policy. Virginia had forged her neighbor's signature to make the document look legitimate. And she'd made one small but critical mistake. She misspelled the neighbor's name. That misspelling would help destroy her. June 27, 1987, started as a beautiful day for sightseeing. Virginia and BJ told Deana they wanted to show her Big Sur, one of the most spectacular stretches of coastline in the world. Deana was excited. She'd been going through such a hard time with the divorce. Getting out, seeing beautiful places, spending time with her friends, it was exactly what she needed. They had lunch together late in the morning at a restaurant. Deana ordered a soft drink. She was laughing, alert, happy to be out. That soft drink would become one of the most important pieces of evidence in this case. Investigators would later conclude that during this lunch, BJ McGinnis slipped some of his prescription antidepressants into Deana's beverage when she wasn't looking. The drug was called Elavil, an early treatment for depression that's usually taken just before bedtime because it causes severe drowsiness. One pill can make someone dizzy and vulnerable. Higher doses cause such extreme disorientation that victims might fall asleep while standing. BJ had a current prescription for Elavil. Deana had never been prescribed the drug. She had no history of depression requiring medication. But within an hour or two of that lunch, the drug would begin working its way through her system, turning her from alert and happy to drowsy and disoriented. After lunch, the three of them drove to Big Sur, to the cliffs overlooking Seal Beach. It's a favorite lookout point for tourists, a place where everyone wants to get that perfect photo with the Pacific Ocean stretching to the horizon behind them. People climb out to the edge, onto the precipice, because the views are that spectacular. And yes, sometimes people fall. Accidents happen at Big Sur with depressing regularity. Everyone wants that perfect shot for Instagram or their photo album. They lean out too far, they lose their footing. They don't respect how dangerous those cliffs actually are. When someone goes over the edge, it's a 500-foot drop to certain ending on the rocks below. Virginia brought a disc camera with her that day. For anyone too young to remember, disc cameras used a rigid circular film disc instead of a roll. This meant investigators could know the exact sequence of photographs, could see the progression of events frame by frame, could watch a person being prepared for ending in real time. The early photos show Deana alert and radiant. She's smiling, posing with the ocean behind her, enjoying the day. Her eyes are bright, her posture is confident. She looks like a young woman having a wonderful time with friends she trusts, but the later images tell a much darker story. As the sequence progresses, Deana's appearance changes dramatically. Her eyes become droopy, her facial muscles go slack, her hands hang limp at her sides. She looks exhausted, docile, barely able to stand. She appears either intoxicated or drugged. But nobody who knew Deana would describe her as someone who used substances. This isn't recreational impairment. This is chemical incapacitation. Then comes the photograph that would haunt everyone who saw it. The final image before Deana's ending captures B.J. McGinnis standing directly behind her at the cliff's edge. She's facing the ocean, staring down at the churning water 500 feet below. B.J. has his arms around her, supporting her weight because she clearly can't support herself anymore. She's slumped across his arms, completely disoriented and helpless. But here's the detail that reveals everything. B.J. quote, "S eyes aren't looking at Deana. They aren't looking at the beautiful view. His eyes are looking sideways, scanning the horizon, checking for witnesses. He's waiting for the perfect moment when nobody is watching. And then he's going to push." After Deana's fall, Virginia took 4 more photographs. Panoramic shots in every direction, capturing the entire area around the cliff. Who takes sightseeing pictures when someone just plummeted to their ending? Who stands at the scene of a tragedy and methodically documents their surroundings? Someone checking to see if there were any witnesses. Someone making sure nobody saw what really happened. Virginia was conducting reconnaissance, creating a photographic record of an empty crime scene. When rescue workers pulled Deana Wild's body from the rocks, the cause of ending was obvious. Basal skull fracture, a massive blow to the back of the head consistent with a 500-foot fall. The initial autopsy was routine, not the detailed forensic examination you'd perform if you suspected foul play from the beginning. Local authorities took no photographs at the scene. Why would they? This was just another tragic accident at Big Sur. Another tourist who got too close to the edge. Virginia and B.J. quote, "S story was convincing. High heels on dangerous terrain. The photos they showed investigators confirmed Deana had been wearing high heels. Everything seemed to check out." Virginia immediately filed a claim for the insurance payout. 24 hours after Deana's body hit those rocks, Virginia was at the insurance office collecting her $35,000 with the casual demeanor of someone picking up dry cleaning. When the insurance agent expressed shock about the tragedy happening so soon after the policy was purchased, Virginia seemed strangely prepared. as if she'd rehearsed this exact conversation. Back in Kentucky, Deana's mother, Bobby, was devastated. Her daughter was gone, fallen from a cliff on what was supposed to be a fun sightseeing trip with friends. But when Bobby tried to collect on a $2,500 burial insurance policy that Deana's employer provided, the insurance company held up the claim. They wanted to do some fact-finding first. Something wasn't adding up. At church, Bobby approached a fellow parishioner, a tax attorney named Steve Keeney, and asked for help navigating the insurance claim. Keeney agreed to look into it. What he would discover would expose one of the most calculating predators in California criminal history, the shadow that revealed the truth. Steve Keeney started investigating Virginia McGinnis's background. What he found was absolutely horrifying. Insurance claims everywhere Virginia went. Fires in buildings where she lived. People passing away under her care. Always the same amount, $35,000. Always paid out without investigation because the sum was just small enough to fly under the radar. Keeney convinced police to reopen Deana's case as a potential homicide. They asked Virginia and BJ for copies of the photographs taken that day. And that's when the disc camera began telling its story. The sequence of images showed Deana's progressive deterioration from alert to incapacitated. Forensic experts who examined the photos noted that she appeared drugged. But proving that would require toxicology analysis, and Deana had been buried for months. Fortunately, the coroner who'd performed the initial autopsy had taken a blood sample for records. When that preserved blood was finally tested, 2 years after Deana's ending, it revealed the smoking gun, traces of Elavil, the same drug BJ McGinnis was prescribed, the same drug that causes drowsiness, disorientation, and sluggishness. The effects matched Deana's appearance in the photographs perfectly. But investigators still had one more piece of evidence to analyze: the shadow in one of Virginia's photographs. Using the timestamp from the 911 call reporting Deana's fall, investigators calculated the sun's exact position at that moment. They analyzed the shadow's length and angle using trigonometry and solar positioning data. The mathematics revealed the photographer's height, 5 feet 6 inches, exactly Virginia's height. The shadow proved Virginia took the incriminating photos. She'd documented her own crime, creating the very evidence that would condemn her to prison for the rest of her life. When investigators took a closer look at the autopsy photos, they found details initially missed. Deana's fingernails were broken. She had injuries on the backs of her hands, but not on her palms. Forensic pathologist Dr. Barbara Weekly-Jones explained what these wounds meant. Accidental falls produce palm abrasions because falling people instinctively grab at surfaces trying to stop themselves. But Deana's injuries were on the backs of her hands, not the palms. The wounds told a nightmare story. As Deana went over the cliff's edge, either by being pushed or losing her balance while drugged, she managed to grab onto something. Maybe a root, maybe the cliff's edge itself. In that desperate moment, completely disoriented from the level but still fighting for her life, she hung there above the 500-foot drop. But instead of rescue, instead of help, someone stomped on her hands. Someone crushed her fingers. Someone forced her to let go, sending her plummeting to the rocks below where the Pacific Ocean would claim her body. Think about the pure evil required to do that. To see someone hanging from a cliff, fighting for their life, and instead of pulling them to safety, you crush their hands and watch them fall. That's not just ending life. That's torture. That's cruelty beyond comprehension. Virginia and BJ McGinnis were arrested on September 15, 1989, under a no-bail warrant. Some sources say the judge set bail at $5 million. Either way, authorities were not letting this predator out of their sight. Virginia had been hunting victims for decades. The trail of bodies was too long, the pattern too clear. But before the trial could begin, B.J. McGinnis passed away in jail from HIV-related complications. He took his secrets to the grave, never having to face a jury, never having to answer for what he did to Deana Wild. Virginia would face justice alone. The trial kicked off on January 6, 1992, nearly 5 years after Deana's ending. And it became one of the most dramatic trials in legal history. The court transported jury members 450 miles north of San Diego to Big Sur, to the actual cliff where Deana had been pushed to her ending. For 2 days, the trial was held right there, 500 feet above the Pacific Ocean. Jurors could hear sea lions barking on the coast below. They could feel the wind that had blown across Deana's face in her final moments. They could look down at the rocks where she'd landed. They walked the same path Deana took to her ending. They stood where she stood. They felt what she must have felt in those final, terrifying seconds when she realized what was happening. The prosecution wanted them to understand viscerally, emotionally, what Virginia McGinnis had done. Back in the San Diego courtroom, prosecutors laid out their case with methodical precision. The insurance policy purchased 1 day before Deana's ending, the forged witness signature, Virginia's history of suspicious passings and insurance claims, the Elavil in Deana's system that she'd never been prescribed, the progression of photos showing her being drugged into helplessness, the defensive wounds on her hands suggesting someone had stomped on her fingers, the shadow analysis proving Virginia took the photos. The defense tried to claim Deana was a substance user who might have taken substances on her own. But Deana's friends from Kentucky testified about who she really was. Fun-loving, trusting, vulnerable, but absolutely not someone who used substances recreationally. And besides, she'd been with Virginia and BJ all day. When would she have obtained or taken anything? The forensic evidence formed an unbreakable chain. Each piece of evidence connected to the next, building a case that was mathematically, scientifically, and logically impossible to refute. On February 28, 1992, after 4 days of deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict. Guilty of first-degree ending of life. Virginia McGinnis, 55 years old, was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Her decades-long pattern of ending people for profit was finally broken. Here's what happened to everyone involved in this case, and some of it might surprise you. Virginia McGinnis spent the next 19 years in prison. On June 25, 2011, she passed away behind bars at the age of 74. She never confessed to what she did to Deana Wild. She never showed remorse. She never apologized to Deana's mother for taking her daughter away. And here's the thing that should make your blood boil. Virginia was only ever convicted for Deana's ending, despite overwhelming evidence that she'd ended multiple people over decades, despite the pattern of suspicious passings and insurance claims, despite everyone knowing what she'd done. Authorities could never gather enough evidence to charge her for any other incidents. Her daughter, Cynthia Elaine Coates, found gone by hanging in 1972. No charges. Her husband, Sylvester Reardon, who passed away under mysterious circumstances in 1974. No charges. Her mother, Mary Agnes Hoffman, who suffered a fatal heart attack in Virginia's care in 1986. No charges. Virginia McGinnis likely ended at least 4 people, possibly more. She walked free for decades, collecting insurance money, burning houses, hunting new victims. And she was only ever held accountable for one ending of life. B.J. McGinnis never faced trial. He passed away in jail in 1991 from HIV-related complications, taking whatever he knew about Virginia's other crimes to his grave. Did he help end Virginia's daughter, her husband, her mother? We'll never know. But given his willingness to push Deana off a cliff, it's not hard to imagine him participating in other incidents. James Coates, Virginia's son who was listed as the beneficiary on Deana's insurance policy, was in prison when the ending occurred. He was later released, but his current whereabouts and status are unknown. He claimed he had nothing to do with his mother's schemes, that he didn't even know about the insurance policy. Whether that's true remains unclear. Deana Wild's mother, Bobby, had to live with the knowledge that her daughter had been befriended by a predator who saw her only as a profitable victim. Bobby was the one who kept pushing for answers, who hired Steve Keeney, who refused to accept that her daughter's ending was just a tragic accident. Her persistence led to Virginia's conviction. Steve Keeney, the tax attorney who started investigating Virginia's background as a favor to a fellow church member, ended up devoting massive amounts of time to exposing Virginia's decades of fraud and ending of lives. His work became the foundation of the book Death Benefit by David Heilbronner, which detailed Virginia's crimes in disturbing detail. The case was featured on Forensic Files in an episode titled The Financial Downfall. Interestingly, the show changed Deana Wild's name to Donna Hartman for television audiences, though they kept Virginia's real name. Nobody knows why. The episode also aired on Oxygen's Accident, Suicide, or Murder series, which featured Deana's high school friends talking about who she really was before Virginia entered her life. The techniques used to solve Deana's case, particularly shadow analysis and photographic sequence reconstruction, are now taught in forensic academies worldwide. Virginia's methodical approach to ending life, her pattern of small insurance claims that flew under the radar, led to reforms in how insurance companies flag suspicious patterns. What keeps me awake thinking about this case is how long Virginia McGinnis got away with ending people. She started in her 20s with those fires, collecting insurance money for buildings that mysteriously burned with her in them. By the time she ended Deana Wild, Virginia had refined her method over decades. She knew exactly how much to claim to avoid investigation. She knew how to make things look accidental. She had the patience to befriend vulnerable people, gain their trust, take out policies, and then eliminate them. Deana Wild was 20 years old. She'd just separated from her husband and was trying to figure out her life. She was vulnerable, far from home, emotionally raw. She had one of the most common phobias, a fear of heights. Yet she supposedly fell to her ending from a cliff. Think about that. Virginia preyed on that vulnerability like a spider sensing vibrations in its web. She befriended Deana specifically because she was an ideal victim, trusting, naive, separated from her support system, with nobody nearby to question what was happening. The photographs Virginia took were meant to be souvenirs. Investigators theorized she wanted twisted mementos, something to relive the experience. The photos would let her experience that feeling of power again and again, looking at images of a drugged young woman moments before being pushed to her ending. But those same photos became the evidence that destroyed Virginia. The shadow she cast while taking pictures revealed her height. The sequence showed Deana being progressively drugged. The final image captured BJ positioned behind Deana at the cliff's edge, his eyes scanning for witnesses. Virginia documented her own crime, creating the very evidence that would send her to prison for life. That's the irony of criminals who think they're too clever to be caught. They always make one fatal mistake. The case shows us something important about predators. They walk among us wearing masks of ordinary people. Virginia looked like a friendly middle-aged woman, someone who'd help a young person going through a tough time. She seemed caring, maternal even. But behind that mask was a calculating predator who'd been ending people for decades, who viewed human life as nothing more than a business transaction, who could stomp on someone's hands as they hung from a cliff and feel nothing but satisfaction when they fell. Without forensic science, without that preserved blood sample, without Steve Keeney's investigation, without the mathematical analysis of shadows and the careful examination of photograph sequences, Virginia McGinnis would have continued ending people. She would still be burning houses, collecting insurance money, hunting new victims. But science caught her. Mathematics proved her guilt. Forensics revealed the truth that Virginia had tried so hard to hide. The shadow she cast was measured by science and found guilty beyond reasonable doubt. The cliffs of Big Sur remember everything. The Pacific Ocean witnessed what happened to Deana Wild. The rocks where her body landed tell a story of betrayal and calculated cruelty. And the wind that blew across that cliff in 1987 carried away not just Deana's final breath, but also the truth that would eventually convict her perpetrator. Deana Wild's ending became her legacy. Her case changed how investigators approach insurance fraud schemes. It showed how photographic analysis can reveal the truth when examined properly. It proved that even the most carefully planned schemes leave evidence, and that evidence can speak from beyond the grave. For Deana, who was fun-loving and adventurous, who trusted the wrong people, who thought she'd found friends when she'd actually found predators, justice came too late to save her life. But it came. Virginia McGinnis spent her final years behind bars, dying in prison at 74, her deadly pattern finally broken. The cliffs of Big Sur don't forget. Neither do those who seek justice for the innocent. And neither should we forget Deana Wild, the young woman whose trust was weaponized, whose vulnerability was exploited, whose ending was choreographed for nothing more than $35,000 in insurance money. That's not just ending life. That's evil in its purest form. And that's why Virginia McGinnis deserved every single day she spent in prison before passing away behind bars, where predators like her belong.